Bewitched bewitched us all in the 60s. This sitcom may have had silly effects and predictable plots, but somehow it became a huge hit. Maybe it was the funny, strong-willed witch Samantha, played by the awesome Elizabeth Montgomery, or the wacky neighbors and magical relatives. Whatever it was, Bewitched became a huge hit. Sadly, many of the show's stars are gone now. Let's remember the actors we miss. Dick York played the first Darren until tragedy struck. Dick York was the original mortal husband on the beloved sitcom Bewitched. He played Darren Stevens, the straight man to his witchy wife Samantha, played by Elizabeth Montgomery. The show's humor came from Darren's frustration with Samantha's magic, and York's acting made it hilarious. Sadly, Dick York had to leave the show after a few seasons because of a bad back injury. He hurt himself while filming another movie, and it never fully healed. He even struggled with pain medication for a while. Even though he tried to come back to acting later, his health just wasn't the same. He did some good work helping homeless people before he passed away in 1992 at the age of 63. Paul Lynde, from Warlock to Hollywood Square. Uncle Arthur was Samantha's cool uncle on Bewitched. Unlike his grumpy sister Endora, Uncle Arthur actually liked Samantha's husband Darren. He even helped them out sometimes with a little magic trickery of his own. Paul Lynde, best known for his role as Uncle Arthur on Bewitched, actually made his debut on the show in a different role, playing a nervous driving instructor in Season 1's Driving is the Only Way to Fly. He was a regular on game shows like Hollywood Squares and appeared in various variety shows, cartoons, and comedy specials, including the memorable Paul Lynde Halloween special, where he was joined by Margaret Hamilton and the rock band Kiss. Despite his successful career, Lynde struggled with alcoholism, leading to several arrests for public intoxication. Tragically, on January 10, 1982, friends who noticed his absence from a birthday party broke into his Beverly Hills home and found the 55-year-old Lynde dead from a heart attack. Marion Lorne's Aunt Clara was the Stevens' favorite Aunt Clara, played by the amazing Marion Lorne, was a scene stealer on Bewitched. Unlike her fancy witch sisters who shimmered in, Clara preferred a dramatic entrance down the chimney. Darren, Samantha's mortal husband, actually liked her. Maybe it was because her magic, well, wasn't exactly top-notch. Things always seemed to go a little haywire when Clara cast a spell, leaving her to clean up the mess. Marion Lorne, the actress who played Clara, had been on stage and screen since the early 1900s. Bewitched wasn't her first TV rodeo, but it became one of her most iconic roles. Sadly, she passed away in 1968 at the age of 84, but not before winning an Emmy for her work on the show. Agnes Moorehead was Endora, the mother of all mothers-in-law. Agnes Moorehead played the witch everyone loved to hate on Bewitched. Endora, Samantha's mom. Endora thought Darren, Samantha's husband, was a terrible match for her witchy daughter. She never missed a chance to put him down, even messing up his name on purpose. Agnes Moorehead was a super-talented actress who had been in movies, on stage, and even the radio before Bewitched. Even though she wasn't sure about being on the show at first, it ended up being a huge hit and gave her a steady paycheck for years. Sadly, Agnes Moorehead passed away in 1974 at the age of 73. Bernard Fox, the witch doctor, is in. Dr. Bombay on Bewitched wasn't your typical doctor. He was a warlock doctor, a magical kind of specialist for Samantha and her witchy family. He always showed up in crazy outfits, and his cures, well, let's just say they caused more trouble than good for Samantha's husband, Darren. The actor behind Dr. Bombay, Bernard Fox, was kind of a TV regular back in the day. You probably saw him on shows like The Dick Van Dyke Show or even the prison camp comedy Hogan's Heroes. He kept acting for ages, even voicing characters in cartoons and movies like The Mummy. Crazy fact, Fox was in 2 Titanic movies. Didn't make it in the first one, but hey, at least he survived the ship going down in the 1997 version. Sadly, Bernard Fox passed away in 2016, but Dr. Bombay's wacky antics will forever be a highlight of Bewitched reruns. Rita Shaw was one of 5 actresses to play Aunt Hagatha on Bewitched. Samantha's family tree seemed never-ending. Throughout the show, a bunch of her aunts, like Hagatha, Enchantra, and Grimalda, popped in to visit at 1164 Morning Glory Circle. There wasn't just one actress who played Hagatha, who ran a witch school and even worked with Endora on a witch certification committee. 5 different actresses took turns playing her. It gets a little confusing, but some of these actresses even played other characters on the show, too. For example, Diana Chesney played Enchantra in one episode, but Nancy Andrews played her most of the time. Rita Shaw is one actress who played Hagatha twice, but she also played a totally different character named Bertha, who showed up unannounced a couple times. Rita Shaw wasn't just on Bewitched. She was in a bunch of musicals, including Mary Poppins, and did a lot of TV work in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Sadly, she passed away in 1982. Dick Sargent, a kindler, gentler Darren number 2. Dick Sargent took over the role of Darren Stevens on Bewitched after the original actor had to leave due to health problems. He brought a different kind of energy to the show, a bit more relaxed and going with the flow, even with Samantha's magic. Elizabeth Montgomery, the actress who played Samantha, even said this in a book. Dick Sargent kept acting in TV shows and movies after Bewitched ended. He also made a brave decision in 1991 to come out as gay in public to help young gay men struggling with their identity. Sadly, he passed away from cancer in 1994 at the age of 64. Alice Ghostly added laughs as klutzy witch maid Esmeralda. Season 6 of Bewitched brought a new face to the Stevens household, Esmeralda, the maid. Played by actress Alice Ghostly, Esmeralda wasn't just any maid, she was also a witch. But her magic wasn't exactly perfect. Sometimes a sneeze would accidentally cast a spell, and stress could make her disappear entirely. Esmeralda stuck around to help Samantha and even took care of the kids sometimes. Some folks say she filled the void left by another witch, Aunt Clara. Alice Ghostly, the actress who played Esmeralda, had a long career in Hollywood. You might recognize her from shows like Hogan's Heroes or even the movie Grease. Sadly, she passed away in 2007. After suffering a series of strokes and a cancer diagnosis, Ghostly died at her home in Studio City, California on September 21, 2007. Estelle Winwood was Witch Committee member Aunt Enchantra on Bewitched. Samantha's aunts were a real handful. Remember when her daughter Tabitha started showing witchy powers? A bunch of aunts from a witch committee showed up to see if Tabitha was ready for witch school. One of these aunts was Enchantra. And guess what? 3 different actresses played her throughout the series. Estelle Winwood was probably the most recognizable actress who played Enchantra. She was British and had a long career on stage and TV. You might have seen her in shows like The Twilight Zone or even Batman. She even worked with Mel Brooks in the movie The Producers. Estelle Winwood lived a very long life and passed away in her sleep at the ripe old age of 101. David White was Bewitched's madman. Larry Tate, the boss man on Bewitched, was all about the Benjamins. Money came first, even if it meant throwing Darren's work under the bus. Still, somehow, they managed to be friends outside the office. Crazy, right? David White, the actor who played Larry, stuck with the show from the start to the finish. Bewitched might have been his biggest hit, but he popped up in other shows like The Twilight Zone and movies too. He kept acting until the late 80s and passed away in 1990 at 74. Samantha's father came from the planet of the apes, ever met your significant other's parents, and immediately felt like you were stuck in a sitcom. That's what happened to Darren on Bewitched when Samantha's dad, Maurice, waltzed in during season 1. Maurice may have looked like your grandpappy with his fancy suits and polite manners, but underneath that charm was a grumpy sorcerer with a short fuse. And just like Samantha's mom, Endora, Maurice couldn't remember Darren's name for the life of him. He called him anything that sounded close, like Dustin, or Doug. The actor who brought Maurice to life was a British legend named Maurice Evans. He was a big deal in the theater world, especially known for his Shakespeare plays. You might also recognize him from the movie Planet of the Apes. Sadly, Maurice Evans passed away in 1989 at the age of 87. Elizabeth Montgomery made witchcraft look easy. As witch-turned-homemaker Samantha Stevens, Elizabeth Montgomery did more than just wiggle her nose to cast spells. She balanced life with her mortal husband, Darren, and her large, eccentric, often disapproving family of wizards and warlocks. Samantha managed both worlds with charm, determination, feminism, and a few spells and incantations along the way. Before Bewitched, Elizabeth Montgomery was already a star on the rise. She'd been killing it in movies and TV shows for years. Bewitched became a monster hit, skyrocketing Elizabeth to superstardom. Even after the show ended, she kept acting in serious TV movies and racking up award nominations for her dramatic chops. Sadly, Elizabeth Montgomery passed away from cancer in 1995 at the young age of 62. Two actresses played the ultimate nosy neighbor, Gladys Kravitz. Bewitched, Gladys Kravitz, played by two different actresses, was always suspicious of the strange goings-on next door at the Stevens house. She'd try to convince everyone her suspicions were true, but her prying ways and bad temper never helped her case. The first actress to play Gladys, Alice Pierce, sadly passed away from cancer during the show's second season. She even won an Emmy Award for her performance, even though she wasn't around to receive it. The show went on, and actress Sandra Gould took over the role. She made Gladys just as suspicious, but even more cranky, which somehow made her a funny character. Sandra Gould kept acting until she died of stroke in 1999. The suburban zen of George Tobias as Abner Kravitz. Abner Kravitz, the neighbor on Bewitched, just wanted some peace and quiet. All he cared about was his newspaper and his flute. Unfortunately, his wife Gladys wouldn't let him relax. She was always suspicious of their neighbors, Samantha and Darren, and thought they were up to something strange. Abner would just shake his head and go back to his hobbies, clearly annoyed by Gladys's antics. The actor who played Abner, George Tobias, had a long career before Bewitched. He started in movies way back in the 1930s and did a little bit of everything: musicals, comedies, dramas, even westerns. He did a lot of TV work in the 50s and 60s, and Bewitched was a big hit for him. After the show ended, he even came back to play Abner again in a spin-off called Tabitha. Sadly, George Tobias passed away from cancer in 1980. Mabel Albertson as Phyllis Stevens, Darren's mother. Mabel Albertson was a working actress in Hollywood for many years, and she loved every moment of it. She started out in movies in the 1950s, appearing in films like romantic comedies with Katherine Grayson and dramas with Richard Widmark. You might have seen her alongside Glenn Ford in a crime movie or with Paul Newman in a steamy Southern drama. Mabel kept at it throughout the 50s and 60s, even scoring roles with big stars like Sean Connery and Robert Redford later in her career. She even got to be in a movie with Barbra Streisand. Her last TV role was in a show called Pete and Tilly in the early 70s. Sadly, Mabel Albertson died on September 28, 1982 of Alzheimer's disease at St. John's Hospital after suffering 7 years of poor health in Santa Monica, California at age 81. Irene Vernon as Louise Tate. Irene Vernon was all over the small screen in the early 50s. Remember shows like The Lone Ranger or The Donna Reed Show? Yeah, that was her. In 1964, she landed a pretty sweet gig on the sitcom Bewitched, playing Louise Tate. But things didn't work out there for long. Apparently, the show's creators wanted her to leave after a friend of hers who wrote for the show moved on, although they said it was because her husband wasn't doing well. On the bright side, Irene also acted on Broadway in a show called The Lady in Ermine. Irene married twice. Her first husband, Edward Dowling, was a big shot in the Army and even directed musicals before serving. They got married in 1944. In 1993, she married Emanuel Rosenberg, but unfortunately he passed away in 1997. Irene herself passed away in 1998 at the age of 76. Warren Parker, as Dr. Henry Clark Warren, created the catchy tunes for the hit sitcom Bewitched, and even got an Emmy for another show, My World and Welcome to It. But Barker was a musical chameleon, comfortable in both TV and the recording world. In the 1970s, Barker decided to trade Hollywood for a quieter life on a ranch. However, retirement didn't stick. He was soon back in demand, composing and arranging music for different publishers. Bands and orchestras around the world commissioned his work, and he often conducted the premieres of his new pieces. He died of natural cause on August 3, 2006, Greenville, South Carolina. Norman fell as Dr. Sigmund Freud. Known for his droopy eyes and grumpy demeanor, Norman excelled at playing complex characters in both dramas and comedies. His big break came in 1976 when he landed the role of Stanley Roper, the uptight landlord constantly at odds with the unconventional living situation in Three's Company. Fell's portrayal of Stanley, perfectly paired with Audra Lindley's hilarious turn as his wife Helen, became a sitcom favorite. Their chemistry was so undeniable that they were given their own spin-off, The Ropers, which ran for a season and a half. Fell's career extended beyond Three's Company. He was a seasoned actor with a long list of credits before the show, and he continued to act after it ended. Norman Fell's personal life was a bit more private. He was married and divorced 3 times, with 2 daughters from his second marriage and an adopted son from his third. Sadly, he passed away in 1998 at the age of 74, Queenie Leonard as Mrs. Mary Wheeler. Pearl Walker, or should we say Peggy Wood, her stage name, was a true entertainer. Born in 1905, she started young, hitting the stage with her dad at the ripe old age of 14. By 1941, with 2 decades of experience under her belt, she landed her first Hollywood role. But Peggy wasn't just a movie star. She wowed audiences in cabarets across Britain and the U.S., even holding her own in a one-woman show. On top of that, she graced TV sitcoms with her presence and even lent her voice to Disney cartoons. Peggy retired in 1968, leaving behind an impressive career. Throughout her life, Peggy was married twice, to film designer Lawrence P. Williams and actor Tom Conway, but neither marriage lasted. Interestingly, she also faced challenges with her eyesight for some time. Peggy passed away peacefully at her Los Angeles home in 2002 at the age of 96. Though she's no longer with us, her legacy lives on. She was, after all, the last surviving cast member of the classic film And Then There Were None. Don Mitchell as policeman. Back in high school, this policeman was a star athlete excelling in both football and basketball, but after college, he traded the sports field for the stage. While studying acting at UCLA, Don landed a lucky break. A producer saw him perform in a play and just 3 weeks before filming began, offered him a role on the hit series Ironside. That's how Don became a familiar face on TV. Over the years, he appeared in shows like Macmillan and Wife and even soap operas like Capital. He even had guest spots on classics like Bewitched and Wonder Woman. Don also took on roles in movies, including Scream Blackula Scream. Don was married twice and had 3 daughters, 2 of whom followed in his footsteps. His daughter Julia Pace Mitchell even became a soap opera actress on The Young and the Restless. Don passed away in 2013 at the age of 70, leaving behind a legacy of athletic prowess and a successful acting career. John Alonzo as Guard, a versatile cinematographer. Native Texan John A. Alonzo began his career at a Dallas television station where he created the character of Senor Turtle for a local children's show. When he brought the tortoise to Hollywood, he found the West Coast inimical to the program and fell back on acting after its cancellation. Although he appeared in The Magnificent Seven and had bigger roles in lesser films like The Long Rope and Terror at Black Falls, Alonzo soon found his acting taking a back seat to the still photography that was paying the bills in between parts. He began to devote himself to the study of cinematography, favoring the work of such standards of excellence as Walter Strange, Floyd Crosby, Winton Hoke, and James Wong Howe. In fact, it was Howe who gave him his big break as a camera operator on John Frankenheimer's Seconds, as well as sponsoring him for union membership. In short order, Alonzo got his first job as director of photography on Roger Corman's Bloody Mama. He died of natural causes on March 13, 2001, at the age of 66. Roland Winters as McMahon. Roland Winters was a successful Hollywood actor for many years. Signed by Monogram Studios in the early 40s, he built a career playing character roles in various films. His early career included adventure movies like Kidnapped and dramas like Cry of the City, alongside Victor Mature. He even acted with a young Roddy McDowall in Killer Shark. The 50s kept him busy with movies like the Alan Ladd western Captain Carey USA and the Susan Hayward comedy Top Secret Affair. He even shared the screen with legends like James Cagney and James Garner. Winters wasn't afraid to show his range. He went from dramatic adaptations to light-hearted musicals, even appearing alongside Elvis Presley in Blue Hawaii. Later in his career, he found success on television with a role in the series You Can't Go Home Again. Winters died at the age of 84 as the result of a stroke at the Actors Fund Nursing Home in Englewood, New Jersey on October 22, 1989. June Lockhart as Mrs. Burns. June Lockhart was like the all-American mom on TV. Unlike some dramatic actresses, she wasn't known for playing all kinds of roles. She had a talent for portraying warm and nurturing characters, the kind of moms you wished you had. Shows like Lassie and Lost in Space really cemented this image for her. Lockhart's acting career actually started way before those TV shows, though. She practically grew up in the industry. Her parents were both actors, and she even had a small part in a movie version of A Christmas Carol when she was just 12 years old. She started on stage and then moved to TV, where she really found her niche. Even though she acted in movies earlier on, her TV roles in the 1950s and 1960s are what she's most remembered for today. So that's it, everyone. Gone but not forgotten. These witches left a mark. Share your favorite memories in the comments. See you next time.